Then you can go up 2 chord tones, back 1, like this. 1, 3, 5, 3, 5, 1, 5, 1, 3, 1, 3, 5, 3, 5, 1, 1, 5, 3, 5, 3, 1, 3, 1. Hey everybody, Gary here with Guitar Tricks, and in this video we're going to go over arpeggios. What are arpeggios? What are they good for? How can we use them? And how can we practice them? Before we get into the lesson, please go ahead and help the Guitar Tricks channel reach 100,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. And if you want to get notified of all the latest and greatest content that comes out, please also tap that bell. So the word arpeggio is really just a fancy Italian word to mean playing the notes of a chord one at a time. So for instance, here is a C chord. Here is a C arpeggio. Right, I just took those notes and I played them separately, right? Now you might be like, all right, next video, I get it, but there's a lot more to it than that. So a lot of times when we play arpeggios in position, we're playing more than just the notes in the chord voicing. Here's an example. Let's say on this G major chord right here, we've got these chord tones. And what they are, we can give them a name. 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. But in this position, if I want to play the complete arpeggio pattern, there's some notes that aren't in the chord. Like from here, I went from 1 to 5, but there's a 3 right here. So I got 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. So there's that extra note that is not in this particular chord voicing, it's actually in this one. That in this position, we can use that. 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. As far as this terminology, 1, 3, 5, to build a chord, you start on the note that you call the root note of that chord. And depending on what key you're in, you take that scale and you skip the next note, and then you keep the following note. So you have 1, you skip over the second note on top of that, and then you have the 3, and then you skip over the next note, the 4, and then you have the 5. That's a basic triad. A basic minor or major triad is this 1, 3, 5. And that's what we're talking about right here. So for instance, let's say we're playing in G major. We've got this full scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So I'll play the arpeggio notes loud and the scale notes soft. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I like to make the analogy between a landscape and mountaintops. You could think of the scale as the full landscape of the key, and then you could think of the mountaintops as the chord tones or the arpeggio notes. Depending on the chord, the mountaintops change. So let's say we're in the key of G, but I'm playing the chord progression G to C. Now the G major scale works over both of those. So I can play any of those notes in the scale if I'm improvising or creating a melody. But if I really want to follow the chord progression, I might purposefully play arpeggio-based ideas. So for instance, on the G, I started with a little arpeggio run. I literally played the G major chord just broken up. And then I did a little scale thing coming out of that. Right? Arpeggio, scale. Then I get to the C chord. There I started with the arpeggio again. Here's the arpeggio. 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. So I did, there's the chord. And then I just kind of went into a scale idea. So if you know your arpeggios and you can see those chord tones for each chord, you can really outline the chord progression that way. So it's similar to chord tone soloing, except chord tone soloing also refers to just the practice of targeting chord tones. So let's say on the G chord I did something like this. It wasn't a total arpeggio. I went 1, 2, 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, but it was still chord tone soloing because I really landed on those chord notes and accentuated those. Now I did the same thing on the C chord. 1, 2, 3, 5, 3, 5, 3. So I accentuated the 1, the 3, and the 5 of that C chord. So arpeggios could be cool for soloing, but also just as a cool alternative to strumming chords or playing chords, all the notes at the same time. So let's say you had just a C chord. You could just go. You know, just play it in a pattern. D chord. Right? A minor. So these are just patterns I'm making up on the spot. I'm literally just going string 5, 4, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 3. You can make up any pattern you want. Right? Or I'm just improvising these. So the sky is the limit. You can just try out different rhythms, different combinations of strings, and make your own arpeggio patterns. So in that regard, for any chord you know, you can just play the arpeggio by playing the notes separately. Now for further homework, I recommend checking out the caged system. There's a lesson on this at guitartricks.com. And the caged system just shows you 5 positions of every chord and 5 positions of every scale, 5 positions of every arpeggio, and kind of puts together the chord shape with the accompanying scale shape. But I'm going to show you the E arpeggio shape, and in the cage system, that's the C-A-G-E-D, because the E shape bar chord is the most popular chord outside of the open position chords, because it has the root on the low E string. And I'm going to show you the E minor shape arpeggio. We're going to do both on a G. So this is a G chord, G arpeggio in the E shape. We call it the E shape because it looks like this. If I played this E chord here, and I imagine my finger was the nut, and then I moved it up to the 3rd fret, it would be a G chord in the E shape. So here we go. This is the major. We start on the E string 3rd fret. That's our G. That's our root note. Then we have the 3rd, which is on the 2nd fret of the A string. We have the 5th on the 5th fret of the A string with our pinky. That's 1, 3, 5. Now we have the octave right below it. So that's 5th fret on the D. Then we go on a little diagonal line. 1, 3, 5, like that. So we have 5th fret, 4th fret, 3rd fret as we go from strings 4, 3, 2. And then the octave again, right here, on the 3rd fret of the high E string. So you want to think to yourself, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 5, 3, 1, 5, 3, 1. And you want to start getting used to what does 1 to 3 look like. Oh, look at that. It looks like that. Same thing over here. Same pattern. What does 5 to 1 look like? Wow, they're on top of each other. 5, 1, 5, 1. Right? So you're going to start to see these patterns, and then when you're improvising or making up melodies, Amazing Grace, then you're going to think things, oh, Amazing Grace starts with 5, 1. Amazing, right? So by understanding these intervals and these arpeggios, you're really going to start understanding how melodies are created and constructed. There we go. 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. 1, 5, 3, 1, 5, 3, 1. Cool. So there's one of them. Now the other one I said is the E minor shape. Now the only difference between the E minor arpeggio and the E major is that we take this 3rd and we go down 1 fret. But instead of playing it over there, we play it over here. So that changes the pattern around. So now we have 3rd fret on the low E. There's our root. Now our minor 3rd is on the 6th fret of the E with our pinky. And then we've got the 5th with our 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the A string. 1, 3, 5, and then 5, 1 again. 5, 1, the stack. And then from here, 1, 3, 5, 1. Look at that, they're all on top of each other. On the 3rd fret of strings 1, 2, and 3, and we just use our first finger for all of them. And if we want to get them to sound out separately, I just like to rotate my finger as opposed to where they all ring out together. So we can go. As opposed to. So 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 5, 3, 1, 5, 3, 1. Cool? So being you know the basic major and minor arpeggio from a low E string root major or minor chord, which is the E shape bar chord, G major, G minor, you can play any major or minor chord arpeggio on the low E string. Just slide the shape around, because major looks like this and minor looks like this. So now, let's say you went from G major to A minor. On the A minor, you just play exactly what you did for the G minor, 2 frets up. Cool, so now let's say we had a chord progression, G major to A minor. You can do things like this. So all I did a G major arpeggio, do, 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 do. Then I slid it up to the A minor. Do, 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 do. Right? So I'm going to do the same thing, but now I'm going to add a chord tone among my arpeggio. So you can kind of use the scale as connective tissue, or you could just do arpeggios. So how do you practice arpeggios? That's the next question. So one thing you can do is just practice one arpeggio or one chord at a time. And just practice going up and down. And just getting good tone at a consistent tempo. You could use a drum track. You can lay down a loop, play that chord so you could hear how it relates to the chord, but you just want to make sure you're locking in with a groove and you're keeping yourself honest and you're making sure that you're playing at a tempo that you could really do it without developing bad habits instead of trying to go too fast. And then you could apply patterns. Then you can go up 2 chord tones, back 1 like this. 1, 3, 5, 3, 5, 1, 5, 1, 3, 1, 3, 5, 3, 5, 1, 1, 5, 3, 5, 3, 1, 3, 1, 5, 1, 5, 3, 5, 3, 1. You can skip over a chord tone and then come back one like this. This really works on your picking too, because you have to skip strings. Or with minor. Now it's worth noting when there's notes that are stacked on top of each other, I like to do this kind of finger rotation. Instead of lifting, I kind of just keep it down and bar it and rotate it. You see, like there. Instead of doing that. And then you could do the same thing with chord progressions. So let's say we did G to A minor. First I could just keep it really straight. You know, and go back and forth like that. Or I could try applying the patterns. could try improvising. And then you'll find yourself starting, as you improvise, to mix together those scale tones, because it's going to start to sound pretty boring with just arpeggio tones, right? So this is just another tool to have in your toolbox. Arpeggios, chords, scales, and then mixing together all of it. So these are just basic major or minor arpeggios. Then there's arpeggios for other chords, like let's say we had a G major 7. Now instead of just 1, 3, 5, we have 1, 3, 5, 7, like this. 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3, 5, 7. Let's see, we had this chord, G major 9. Now we have 4 notes, the 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, or right? So you want to start with your triads, learn all your triads all over the neck, and play arpeggios using those triads. Triad is just 1, 3, 5, and then learn how to add the 7, how to add the 9. All right, everybody, I hope this lesson was helpful and it gave you an overview of what arpeggios are. You could use them just to break up your chords from strumming to arpeggiating. So instead of just, you could use them in your soloing, you could use them in your melody making, and it's just a way to really lock into whatever chord progression you're playing. And then by trying to play arpeggios over chord progressions you're learning, you're really going to learn the chord progressions and get inside the harmony of the song. All right, everybody, hope you had fun with this one. If you want to see more lessons like this, please subscribe. If you want to learn more about all of this stuff, head over to guitartricks.com. Happy playing, and I'll see you in the next lesson.